Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Dan.
Glad to see you here at the CISO XC conference.
Yes.
And we've been chatting a little bit. So I understand that you are the CISO at Invitation Homes.
That's correct.
Could you explain a little bit about your business in case there are people in the audience who don't know exactly what your business does?
Oh, great. And great opportunity. And extremely happy to be here at the CISO XC conference, one of the best conferences around. Invitation Homes, single family home leasing company nationally here in the United States. We have over 100,000 homes that we lease out. We make that home a better experience for that resident. You don't have to think about anything. We have a mobile app that will take care of everything from the payments to getting a maintenance technician. Garbage disposal fails, we take care of it. Now, anything goes wrong at home, we take care of it. You live in our homes to have a better life. And we have homes from Seattle, California, Arizona, Las Vegas, Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, a little bit in Chicago, and a little bit in Minneapolis. But nationally, we're one of the premier, and the premier, I should say, leasing home providers in the United States, and we've been around. I'm going to celebrate 14 years this year.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a very interesting business. Sounds like a great service. I could have used that at some point in my life.
Hey, you still can now. Come on, I have to generate some revenue also, right?
Exactly. So given the size and scope of that business,
Yes.
compound question here, two parts. What keeps your CEO up at night? And what threats or occurrences worry you and keep you up at night as the CISO?
Oh, great questions. I will start with the first one. What keeps the CEO up at night is when I'm nervous. As the CISO, you're expected to be the calm person in the room. That's always been the traditional point. And even with the emerging risk that we have now and the emerging technologies, you still have to have that calm factor. Your ability to navigate the waters allows the rest of the C-suite, especially the CEO, to maintain that forward thinking, understanding where they're trying to take the organization, and you're gently guiding them to the left, to the right, speed up, slow down. So that has been the key point. Now, for me, what keeps me up late at night is trying to make sure you balance the time well with your people.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a CISO, you're not touching the keyboard a lot anymore, but your folks are touching the keyboard. So how are you empowering your resources on your team? How are you making your engineers better? How are you making your integrators better? How are you helping folks navigate their career? It's a firm belief that anyone on your team, as they start on your team, they're at level A. When they leave your team for better opportunities or moving up in the company, they should be far and away better than they were when they came on your team.
Okay. So that's very interesting. So you took this in a direction that I wasn't thinking, but it's going to play into some things I'm going to ask you later. But you're talking about not just automation, but growth of your staff and
Yes.
growth of your people. And so you touched on something there that we were talking about just before coming in here. You said that you're intended to be the calming influence and the reasonable person who has judgment in the C-suite. You also mentioned that the CISO role itself is newer and the C-suite is getting used to exactly what your function is. And so how does that create more challenges for you?
That's a great point. And the evolution. At first, it was just an information security guy or just a tech guy. Then it kept evolving. Then it became Chief Information Security Officer. Wow, that's a very impressive title. It just means you've been there for some time. You've seen some points, but you don't have the same amount of tenure and title as a CIO or the CLO or the CFO or the COO. So you're the young C at that table. When you think about it, all the other C levels can be in chairs. I'll give you a picture. It's a table. Everybody else is in chairs, and nice stable chairs. The CISO is the only one with wheels on his chairs, rolling side to side, because when things move from left to right, you're shifting, you're moving, but that is the nature. But it's great as we continue to be able to be in the board meetings, executive meetings, have to tell that story. And that's where we have to get used to being very understanding of the new technology, but Always be able to throw on the hat and think strategically, because you have to strategically be aligned to help your company move forward.
Right. Well, that is very interesting, and I can empathize with that. You know, being a person who is an engineer at the beginning of my career as
Yes.
well, and has then gone into management, there's always that draw to, well, I understand the technology,
Yes.
so let me get focused on that. And there can be pressure from management to keep the technical roles in the technology and not elevate them to the judgment level.
Yes. Yes.
And so, thinking about that, what are the pieces of information or the systems or the metrics that that furnish information to you that you need to go in and have those discussions in the boardroom and in the C-suite? Because it's different than what you're talking to your technical teams
That's
about.
correct. That's correct. Great point. And I think understanding what metrics are really driving the business, what metrics are really identifying what you need to understand. When I break down elements in our organization, especially from a cyber perspective, there's data, there's information, then there's the management decision.
Mm-hmm.
Younger CISOs may get lost in a lot of data. And then you have to understand how to take that data. Sometimes it's noise, and sometimes just overload, Dan.
Yeah,
You know,
see a lot of
now
that.
how do you get that to information? Then how can I use that information for a management decision?
Mm-hmm.
That is the key element. I always look at the process of breaking things down into three. And if I can't get that data into a point of information, why do I need it?
Well, that's a good point, because it may be something that's a necessary component for someone to do his or her job,
Yes.
but it's not. Yeah, it's not a decision-making point, and
No.
it's not a uh, business planning point for
Well,
you to make.
business planning point, when you're in a leadership position, you should be able to know what looks fancy. Remember the old data centers they would take you on a tour? You could see all the lights blinking.
Yeah,
That was a lot of fluff, right?
right.
Now, you have to understand some of that data is not needed for what you want. Hey, what is the key element? Not how many tickets you're doing. You're expected to, how many repeats? That could be an indication of a problem right there, because either your process is not good or your training is not good, because you have no repeating problem. And rework on items is the worst thing for your team. We never have enough people. So how can you get efficient in making sure items going from right to left, left to right, whatever you want to say in a linear manner, it's getting done, not in a loop. That's where we get tied up. And if you're tied up in a loop, you may not be looking at the right item, and it could be something that you should see that you miss.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, and you know that's what we're trying to help organizations as a vendor, as Ridge Security, as continuous security and prioritization. We're trying to furnish decision-making information,
Yes.
and you touched on something there, which is another element. And I'm actually going to ask you a question about it later, so you don't have to go into it in great detail. But you talked about data, then information. Information as something that you can actually make decisions on,
Yes.
and the company can move forward. But there's this element of risk. And it's how do you judge, once you have that information, how do you judge what the risk is in that? And there are sections of the business that are only about compiling risk, but seems to me the CISO has to marry the judgment of risk with the technical and the manpower and the systems to actually address it.
Yes. Good point. Risk will always be there, and that's the reason we have CISOs, right? Because they're there to help manage that risk. When you look at that risk, it's great, and just make sure you don't get too emotional with it. Once you understand what the risk is, look at your countermeasures to that.
Mm-hmm.
Once you understand your countermeasures, that's what you really want to grade. If the risk is red and your countermeasures are red, you have a serious problem. Just using a red, yellow, green chart. If your risk comes out as a red and your countermeasures are light yellow to green,
Okay.
you're doing the best you can. And if that residual risk is acceptable now, okay, you're okay because you have to chart that traditional points. Are you going to transfer the liability of that risk? Are you going to overall mitigate that risk or are you going to accept the risk? You try to move away from accepting too much. That creates the wrong culture of cybersecurity. You're trying to do the best you can for can you transfer some of that risk? And can you mitigate that? So the risk, and an example I always look at, we're in Dallas, Texas, right? You will look at a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
Man, major impact. A tsunami? Oh man, you would think that's catastrophic. What's the probability of that happening here?
Right.
So now you can apply the right countermeasures to that.
Right. And what would be the expense of building not just for tornadoes, but for tsunamis, to eliminate that last, 1/10 of 1%.
Yes.
No, I like that perspective. And again, often as a vendor that has to talk to all levels of the organization, we will talk to technical people who say, well, I want to get this to 100% coverage. And, sometimes those things just can't exist. And that's why you have to make that sort of, risk reward trade-off.
You said something right there. Now, when I'm mentoring a lot of the younger guys that on the team, and even when I'm out and about in the community, there's one thing I learned in my consulting days. You always stay away from always, and you never say never.
Okay, I like
So
that.
that 100%, hey, get to a point that's pretty good. And
Right.
As a CISO, Dan, when we're talking about risk, we have to always understand we're telling a story. The cyber team lives in nanoseconds.
Mm-hmm.
You start going up the chain, maybe that department leader is in minutes. Then you get up there to the VP level. That could be hours, right?
Right.
Then by the time you get to the board, it's a day clock. So you're spending, you have to slow down, and there's still a time continuum,
Right.
but you're telling the story and you got to make sure it's relevant based on who in the organization you're talking to, but just tell the story. Don't get enamored with all of the buzzwords because those change. Talk about principles. Principles will sustain time. Buzzwords go up and down just like a roller coaster.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm going to ask you if you can come and talk to some of my customers. Yeah. So want to get into some specific things about what's happening today, but one more question just sort of about your business.
Yes.
Do you believe, based on what Invitation Homes does and what your business model is, are there unique things to your IT environment or unique threats that a different business, say a manufacturer, might not have?
I will say this, manufacturing definitely deals in a lot of OT, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about that. But what has happened with the advent of AI, it is almost normalized the field. You just can't say, I'm only worried about X. You almost got to think laterally so much because so many of the AI models can start to identify things much faster.
Yes.
And therefore, just take, like we talked about, risk is risk. Now, if you're in healthcare, you will have a little bit extra.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, man, the field has been normalized.
Yes.
And it is so level now where that proverbial, you have to keep your head on the swivel.
Right.
You're looking, and don't discount anything because it may be able to be manufactured into something more in a split second.
Right. And everyone is an equal target because
Yes.
everyone can be equally
No
approached in
discrimination.
nanoseconds. Yeah.
Just no discrimination.
Well, that's fabulous because you gave the lead into what my next question was going to be, which was the emergence of AI and
Yes.
what you see that doing. So I've two questions about how you see it. And the first is about internal use of AI. How do you see that happening? How is it happening today in your organization? And how does that increase the threat landscape?
Great question. Internally, we had a chance to see this going back in time when PCs and people was able to start to purchase PCs. They could have more power at home than they had at the office. You remember that time?
I remember that.
So,
and then bring your own device because they wanted the convenience.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've seen a similar story. The actor's a little bit different, but it's a similar plot. And as a CISO, you have to recognize listen to the organization. What is the appetite? What is a must have versus a nice to have? And you got to be able to give and take and negotiate this because, oh, I want to use this model. Okay, great. There's a lot of different models out there, but I would just ask you, which one is really the best?
Hmm.
What are you looking for? Regardless of the model, what are you looking for?
Right. It's got to be results driven.
Yes,
Yeah.
results driven. And if you're trying to do X, did you know we have one that's close to that? And just have that conversation. I think the problem is when you're just trying to tell any one organization, don't do this. Don't. No, you know that Department of No that we always get labeled with? It's not the NO. We have to much more use KNOW. I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what you're trying to achieve.
Yes.
And then let me help you get there. And sometimes I think we have to do this. It's a give and take. We may have to go, wow, that was better than what I was thinking.
Yes.
Let us get there, or give us some time to look at that. Now, with that, then doing the risk assessments, it is, you're spending doing risk assessment continuously now.
Yes.
And the models can change so quickly. Now you have to do risk assessment A or A sub 1 or A sub 2 because it keeps changing and changing. That is an item. I don't have a pure answer for that one, but we created that. We always say, hey, we must do a risk assessment. Now we could be a inhibitor right there because we're being inundated by it, but it's good. We just have to get faster at it.
Right. So you don't want to get in the way of innovation, but you have to still manage the risk. And I was going to ask you about, well, what about AI as threats from the outside? But I think you've kind of answered that because, look, the bad actors are using AI as well to formulate threats, to try to break in. And it's that continuous change, that continuous formulation of threats everywhere.
Yes, that's the key point. The challenge we have on the corporate side, we have to go through budgets, right? You have to prove your ROI, and there's a lot of meetings you go through. The threat actors move a little bit quicker. They still have fundamentally what is that return, but they just go through it faster.
Yes.
Right. And we have to get there. But again, going on the risk assessment, we have to look at that and be able to understand what is key. If this particular LLM is using what MCP is good. Right now, the landscape of MCPs out there, which one is good and which one is not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That poisoning could be that entry point into the organization that could cause a problem. You think you're talking to business one, you're talking to business ones. And you didn't know it. And you're just, oh man, I need that. And the human air gap with all this great technology we have, AI is great. It's going to help us. I think it's going to be very useful for us. But the human air gap must remain there. Mm-hmm. There's a reason you're sitting in your spot, Dan. The reason I'm sitting in my spot, we're providing some value. We just have to know how to make sure we align it with the use of this technology.
Sure. No, I agree with you completely. And at the end of the day, it's a system, it's a productivity tool.
Yes.
And it has to be used by humans, not the other way around. So with this increasing speed and span of threats, we as a vendor see, and what we are trying to produce for our customers is a continuous threat monitoring and a continuous penetration testing tool. How do you and other CISOs you talk to see the move towards continuous security stances away from point-in-time testing or point-in-time assessment? A lot of organizations we talk to say, well, hey, look, my regulations say that I need to do this type of test once per quarter. We say, but the threats are continual.
Yeah.
So
I think with the usage of AI, we're going to hit a new realm. Now, this is my opinion, right? I believe you're going to be able to almost have a snapshot of your entire environment, load it into a model, and continue to run. And you will be able to get so many permutations on issues, impact. Oh, let's take that back. And that looks pretty good. That's what I think is going to be a beneficial point to us. So you're not doing an actual pen test in your actual environment. You've taken that snapshot, with the good integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You got to go back. So some of this, you have to take care of the hygiene issues. If you have bad hygiene, the simulation I'm talking about is not going to work. But with a good hygiene and trust and integrity of your environment, take that snapshot of environment, load it up into the AI model, and let it run.
Mm-hmm.
Let it run. That will give you good, hey, it's a lot of data in there. We can turn it into information. Management decision. That's the threat we need to address. So continuous pen testing can be in a whole different realm. And how good would that be?
Yeah, continuous modeling. It's
man.
Do it before I deploy it and understand it in like the way it would really exist. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
You walk into a CISO's office and one of the monitors, they say, what is that? Your metrics? No, I'm just running some testing. I'm doing continuous pen testing.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. And I'm getting the results right here. Then I'm going to put it through and decide which one in a prioritized manner can we go through.
What it sounds like to me is it's a change from the old days of stock trading when people called up their brokers and, and people were on the floor waving tickets to the automated computerized systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan, you hit on the key point. So realistically, how many people balance a checkbook right now? Everything is online.
Yes.
You can go online, do your fight. Look how we've transitioned. You're sitting there and you can look at everything for your family. You're online with your respective institution and you're going through everything. Get your net worth, understand what needs to be paid. Make an adjustment on that. And stagger your payments. That's where we got to get to. And that's what I envision as CISO having just a monitor with so many models going. Oh, you want me to run that against X? Okay, let me do that. Let's take this to level 2. Run it through. Run it. Go have lunch. Come back and see what happens.
That is great. I like the vision. That is
it's way out there, vision. Right?
Well, but it's what we should be getting to. That is great. Well, I really appreciate your perspective on this. And it is really interesting to talk to a decision maker and just get insight into your judgment. And so I'm going to ask you a final question.
Yes.
And this is kind of, where does this judgment come from? So how do you keep abreast of all of the news, all of the changes, the new technology, everything that you need to know? What are your sources of information? Reading, conferences, listening, watching. What's your formula for that?
Yes.
Always say always, yeah.
I'm trying to maximize the time. You as a leader, you have to maximize the time. It could be in your car. What are you listening to? But you always have to know what's the balance for you. And I would say we're at the CISO XC conference. I think this is great. When I talk to some of my peers, because there's one thing to understand in technology. The political capital you may have to use to get that implemented can be, and that's not an AI item. Political capital still among the humans, right? So how can you persuade the CFO to trust you on this, or the COO, the CIO, whoever you report to in the organization? That is really key. And understanding you got to get some wins. Stack up your wins. But going back to your first point, do a lot of reading. I like Audible books. I try to use those when I go work out. Helps me kind of pull in some information and just keep understanding. It's PPT is not going away. Spend a lot of time on the process, because that's the one item that can still transcend time. Technology is totally changing. People are changing. And the desires, the intrinsic, extrinsic values of people are changing. But the process, that's the one I even got to lean in, and I try to rely upon that a lot.
Great. Well, it brings you back to your whole point about people up front.
Yes.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate your perspective. It's been great speaking with you.
Thank you, Dan. I enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.